Now, one message was very clear during the election. We kept the tape over and over and over again. One of the reasons to change the government was, tell us again.
Cost of living.
Cost of living crisis.
Cost of living.
Cost of living crisis.
The cost of living pressures. Cost of living.
Cost of living pressures have been building.
Cost of living.
Cost of living issues.
Cost of living.
Cost of living pressures.
Cost of living.
Well, guess what magically didn't change when you changed the government? The cost of living crisis. It is going to be one of the central ways people will judge whether this government has delivered or not. If they can get on top of it, they most likely get rewarded with a second term, the one they're already planning for during the, 9 days of victory laps that they've been having. They had another victory lap, of course, again today. This is what they will be judged upon. And the reality is that while Australia's economy is growing, the difficulty for people between their wages and what things cost is getting worse. A perfect storm, as it was being described today in the media. And Jim Chalmers, who has spent a very long period of time trying to pretend that the cost of living crisis was not cyclical, but personal, a personal failure of the former Prime Minister, a personal failure of Josh Frydenberg, a tone deafness of your local Liberal MP, well, now he understands that now he's got the big boy job, that there are some cyclical factors involved here.
There is no point tiptoeing around these serious economic challenges. There's no point mincing words about the sorts of conditions that we have inherited. We've inherited high and rising inflation and rising interest rates. We've inherited falling real wages, and we've inherited $1 trillion in debt with nowhere near enough to show for it.
Well, apart from an unemployment queue that didn't go on up and around the block for months and months and months and months. He, by the way, is the economic genius who, never forget this, at the height of the pandemic said that the taxpayer should buy Virgin Airlines. But that's right. He's run a business, right? Oh, that's right. No, he hasn't. He's been a very effective staffer, very good at politics. But they're starting to realise people will judge them on expectations. Expectations, as well as incompetence, always undoes a brand new government. We'll be here in the front row each and every night to point it out to you, not to be smug, but to hold them to account. They've been very personal, but you watch now how it's all out of our hands. We're going to have a chat to John Howard a bit later in the show. He, of course, was able to turn Australia's economy around and hand it off in a much better shape than the one that he got when he took over the country. What's his advice about how to deal with inflation?
By adopting very sensible, well-tried economic measures, such as not spending too much, trying to free up the supply side of the economy, to have a productive labour market. I'm not sure that increasing wages as an objective in itself is necessarily the right approach.
That and a whole lot more with one of the greats on this show tonight, John Winston Howard. Also worth talking about here, as interest rates start to go up, because that's what happens, particularly when it comes after inflation. They promised again today 5.1% for the minimum wage, which, guess what, adds to the costs of business, which only 2 people in the cabinet know anything about. One because he ran a small business a long time ago, and one because he had a winery. 2 people understand that the paycheck doesn't come from the union. 2 understand that the paycheck doesn't come from the state or federal government. 2. Now, of course, when interest rates go up, guess what happens? Australians who borrowed too much money for too long and didn't pay it back when they should have, well, guess what? With a global recession on its way, potentially 30 to 40% of a chance of the next 3 months in the United States going backwards like the previous 3 months, guess what's going to go up? Interest rates.